Silent Hill 2, released in 2001, an indirect sequel to the survival horror game Silent Hill, released in 1999, is a staple of horror in gaming and the video game industry as a whole. By utilizing heavy symbolism to represent the human psyche, how we deal with trauma, guilt, fear, grief, and several other heavy topics, the game is subtle but says so much. Themes in the overarching story are psychological, and the horror presented in the game is the same, with no jump scares, but a constant feeling of dread and lack of safety. How Silent Hill 2 builds its characters in the world is something many games that attempt the same just simply cannot do. And the main antagonist of the game, who is, today, an iconic villain that is revered by many gamers and developers alike. This is an amateur analysis of Konami's Silent Hill 2, the psychology of its characters, environments, and overall story. Also, I'm no psychologist, so if you feel I got things wrong when analyzing, please feel free to comment on that. Just be civil when discussing, please, and don't be an ass to others down in the comments. Firstly, we meet our protagonist in the opening cutscene of the game, James Sunderland, a 29-year-old widowed, troubled man who is brought to the town of Silent Hill, Maine. This is via a letter from his 3 years dead wife, named Mary, saying she is waiting for him at their special place. Arriving at what appears to be a street-side bathroom, James questions if Mary is even there, running his hand over his face in a mirror, a sign he may be pondering if his situation is real or something of a dream. Leaving the station's building, we see him looking out towards Toluca Lake, seemingly invested in his own thoughts before we are able to start our trek towards the eponymous town. James is definitely confused, uncertain of how the letter that dragged him to Silent Hill came to be. We can already figure something's wrong. If his wife is 3 years dead, where did that come from? As we make our way, we arrive in a graveyard and encounter our first character, a short-haired young woman wearing a gray sweater and red jeans. She's startled by James at first and displays confusion on him being lost. She warns James of the town having something wrong with it, but James simply says to be careful. The woman also suddenly asserts her honesty at this, saying she isn't lying. When asked why he's going there, he responds he's looking for someone very important to him, with the woman saying she's looking for her mother, whom she calls Mama. Could they both be in Silent Hill? She also mentions her brother and father as well. Interestingly, they were both brought to the town by a want to find a loved one, something that can persuade anybody to do risky, even life-threatening things. Also, when she speaks, it's filled with stutters and uncertainty, signals of social anxiety. Reaching Silent Hill, we get glimpses of our first enemy, walking amongst the fog of the town. Enemies in the game are not made without reason. Each enemy has a specific meaning, a symbolism attached to it that makes them more than just horrifically mutilated or shaped humanoids. The ones we see in the distance are called lying figures, representing possibly an inner torment, a pain that cannot escape one's person, mental or physical. Their convulsions back and forth could be them wanting to break free, but they can't. Connecting to James, we can't decipher much yet, but we could assume our beloved main character is holding back some level of anguish. The death of a loved one is always a heavy burden, especially when it's one's spouse. We knew from the start that James is not exactly in a good, clear mindset, so could this enemy be a manifestation of some unhappiness? After we get our first weapon, a plank, how useful, and the radio, we are able to explore more of Silent Hill. The town is empty aside from only human lying figures, that woman nowhere to be seen, nor Mary. Fog covers the town as well, which makes visible distance very short. Most of what James is doing is just running around, trying to make some progress. Memos can be found strewn about in places, with one series detailing the monsters an unfortunate soul came across, with the first one having the author question if they are simply hallucinations or visions, since his friend didn't pick up on them. Knowing James is carrying some form of grief or sadness, could these demons be visible to those with such darknesses, or was the writer of the memo simply going insane? After we get a key from a corpse, the first major level is reached at the Woodside Apartments, a worn-down, unkempt apartment complex that neighbors Blue Creek Apartments. We are only able to enter the lobby, second, and third floors at first. On the second, we can find our pocket flashlight, which allows us to see in the dark. A new enemy also emerges when we pick up the flashlight, a headless mannequin whose head portion is replaced by a set of legs, with their feet missing. Symbolically, we can't be very sure of what they represent quite yet this early on. We could theorize maybe it has to do with Mary, since the mannequin we picked the flashlight off of was wearing her clothing. We know she had an illness before she died, and was presumably in a hospital for a while, and that enemies in the town could be manifestations. Could it be James' memories of Mary at the hospital? Metaphorically speaking, the apartments might serve as a representation of James's inner confusion, as he runs around the various rooms and hallways attempting to find answers for where his wife is. Even though James is trying hard to get answers, he only gets farther away from his goal with more questions appearing. Going to the 3rd floor, we can encounter another character, who seems to be a little girl lost within the apartments. James reaches over for a key behind a set of bars blocking the other side of the hallway, but the girl flings the key away, giggles at him, and runs off. Odd to see someone look so cheerful in a place like this, though. While searching through the floor, we can come across room 301, whose walls are, as James quotes, pockmarked with gunshots. As expected, in the center, there is a shopping cart that carries a lone handgun, which we can pick up as our first, and very versatile, ranged weapon. Continuing, down on the 2nd floor, we hear a cry of pain from an unknown source north of here. In the long claustrophobic hallway adjacent to the main one, a certain red, pyramid-headed figure stands behind it, staring but not moving. Going into room 208, the one next to the bars, we get a cutscene of James coming across a gory human corpse sitting in front of a static TV. James is very much unsettled by this, quietly wondering who caused the scene. As we move on, there is a grandfather clock. When we attempt to move it, the clock appears to be stuck to the ground. We have to visit room 202, reach our hand into a hole, and get a key. This is used to unlock the clock's faceplate, and we then move the hands to 910. A sound is heard, and we can move the clock. A thin gap in the wall is shown, and we are able to get into the adjacent apartment room, room 209, passing the hallway's bars. The figure is also gone when we exit the room. Either this is something watching us do our tasks, or it wasn't real. We can go to a staircase room, which allows us to access the portion of the 3rd floor hallways we couldn't before. The first few doors we check are broken, but room 307 holds a central piece to our puzzle. Upon entering, we get a cutscene of the same figure we saw behind the bars having some fun time with 2 mannequins, which he then kills. Nothing explicit is modeled, it's just movements for a little bit, don't worry. James hides in a nearby closet witnessing this, raising his gun and shooting a few times before the figure, going towards the closet, then leaves. This character will come up several more times in the game and is extremely important to the whole story, but we'll get to him in a bit. For now, James finds a key to the outside courtyard in his hiding closet. We leave the room and continue exploring the 3rd floor with not much of interest aside from other healing items and handgun ammunition. However, we find the key the girl kicked out of our reach, the fire escape key. The girl, however, has run off into the unknown. Choosing to go to the courtyard first, we go all the way down to the lobby floor and open the door to the left of the staircase. The courtyard is just any old courtyard, though the pool in the center has 3 lying figures and no water. We could choose to kill them, and we find a baby carriage with a coin. The coin, named Snake, is one of 3 strewn about in the apartments. Entry into the courtyard allows us to move into the 1st floor of rooms as well. Choosing to go to the right, we can encounter a mostly empty room if we ignore the dead body laying inside the fridge in the kitchen section. There's also the disgusting sound of someone puking in the room. Going into the bathroom, we discover the source. An overweight, blonde-haired guy wearing a blue-white striped shirt with beige shorts, relocating his stomach contents into the toilet. How beautiful. The cutscene begins with him saying he didn't do it, and that
he was like this when I got here.
Referring to the body in the fridge. James introduces his name, and the kid responds he's Eddie. When he's asked about Pyramid Head, who James calls Red Pyramid Thing, Eddie doesn't know what he's talking about, though he does mention seeing monsters. Going back to what we've read with the memos out in the streets, Eddie not seeing Pyramid Head but seeing other creatures does follow the memos' writers' monsters being visible to him, but not the friend he was with. This also goes in line with the town's entities being real to those with the darkness inside of them. Something wrong, really. Knowing James is hiding something inside and has to deal with several things trying to kill him, maybe Eddie has his own manifestations to deal with as well. Eddie also notes that he doesn't live in Silent Hill either, which makes James also add that something may have brought him here too. Following this, there's not much of interest on the first floor aside from the eastern hall, whose rooms are unable to be entered, but has a pack of canned juice on the end. Seems useless at first, but on the second floor's public laundry room, the trash was jammed. Placing the juice pack inside of the chute will allow the trash to fall down to the bin out by the front. Going over there, we can grab another coin, labeled Old Man, along with a newspaper article. The article reads of a man, Walter Sullivan, who was arrested for murdering Billy Locane and his sister Miriam. Oddly, Walter spoke of a red devil, saying that he's trying to punish him, trying to kill him. Could that have been a manifestation like the powers Silent Hill has, similar to James's with Pyramid Head? If so, the effects the town has on people could be much more profound than once thought, making them be able to go into homicidal rages rather than just depressive episodes. With this, the Woodside apartments are fully explored. Using the fire escape key we got earlier, we can unlock the fire escape door on the second floor. Though, despite the name, there's no fire escape, however, the window in front of us is broken open. James climbs into it and enters Blue Creek Apartments. And here, the apartment we go to seems fine, though the toilet in the bathroom is filled with a brown, gross liquid. And, in a beautifully horrific decision no sane human would make, James sticks his bare hand in there to retrieve a wallet with a code for a safe. The safe, though, just contains bullets. I don't know what you're thinking, but I don't think anybody with a clear mind would use their naked, probably unwashed hands for that. Crazy-ass Blondie over here. Exploring through more of the second floor, we encounter a locked door with a note on the front. Inspecting it, we read that a key is placed somewhere on the first floor. The staircase to the left of the room we used to enter Blue Creek allows us to access it. Going into room 105, we will discover a table with a closed lid on the front, which has 5 circular empty depressions. There is also a riddle on it, which can give us the solution to the puzzle. Trying to solve it with 2 coins isn't sufficient though, so we need to look for a third one. Room 109, when we enter, appears to be a more destroyed than usual room, with a plain white door next to a heavily boarded off one. Entering into the white door, we encounter the woman from the graveyard lying on the ground holding a knife. We find out her name is Angela, and James attempts to help her reconsider what she may be planning to do. She hasn't found her mother and isn't sure if she's in the apartments or even Silent Hill at all. When James inquires about Mary, Angela doesn't know of her either. He also mentions that she's dead, and Angela appears much confused about this. James replies saying he's not crazy, at least he thinks. Angela gets up, knife still in hand, continuing the hunt for her mother. James takes notice of the knife as well, with Angela asking if we could hold it for her, citing she doesn't know what could happen if she holds it. Angela, however, cries in fear when James reaches for it and holds it pointing towards him. Leaving, she stammers on her words, and we're left alone with her knife and a yellow coin on the nightstand. Analyzing what happened, we knew from the start that Angela was unwell mentally, though we didn't know that she may be as deep as to consider self-harm or worse. The cry she made at the end of the scene too is interesting. James moves closer to Angela, which makes her retract back in fear. Knowing what Silent Hill does to people who have repressed traumas, Angela's reaction could head towards that. Maybe she quickly snapped into a PTSD type response? It could be applicable that James's presence in her world could be a sign of help, but of not much use, especially when she didn't seem too enthusiastic when we arrived in the room. James's try at seeming like he's stable is more affirmation that he's definitely not. We've already seen what could be his delusions wanting to kill him, Pyramid Head, and how he was at the beginning of the game with him feeling his face. For the lying figures, we've established they're a symbol of James's pain and anguish, and the mannequins having maybe something to do with Mary. It's common for those to hide issues like this, wanting to not annoy others and worsen their situations, and more so when questioned about their mental states if there's not enough trust. Denial is a way for one to convince themselves that simply living with it is easier rather than letting it out, though this can have pretty undesirable consequences on one's psyche. The coin left on the table is labeled Prisoner, with a young woman on the front probably representing Angela. The third coin allows us to solve the puzzle in the previous room. Unlocking it will give us the key to the locked door with the note on it on the second floor. Unlocking it entering the apartment will present us to a practically empty room with the balcony door open. Strangely, a whispered sentence can be heard while in here, though it hasn't been fully deciphered what is being said. Walking through the balcony, we can see the dividing wall has been broken into, allowing entry into the next room over. Here, we can find a key, the apartment staircase key. This lets us unlock the door at the end of the hall, which we are almost right next to. Entering there brings us to Pyramid Head, doing something to a lying figure. He kills it as James fruitlessly tries to escape by tugging at the suddenly locked door behind him. As he turns to look at Pyramid Head dragging himself towards him, we are locked in an apparent boss battle with PH. The space we have to run isn't much, but PH's slow speed makes the encounter much easier. When he comes near us, the figure will stop and bring up the gigantic knife he's holding or attempt to do a sideways swing at James. And no, weapons cannot do anything except slow PH down temporarily. After a while of looping around, Pyramid Head will descend down the flooded staircase with James having survived. Going down the steps, we enter a water-damaged underside with the door leading to the outside, completing the apartments. As we walk through the streets of Silent Hill, let's take a moment to talk about our pyramid-headed friend. He's not too bulky or strong-built compared to James and wears a dirty, blood-stained garment of some type. He also appears to wear gloves along with boots. His most prominent feature, of course, is his huge pyramid-shaped helmet which completely covers his face. He carries a large, heavy, sharp, knife-like weapon, which he drags along the floor, and probably is what makes him so slow along with the helmet. Symbolically, we can assume this is a central part of James's psychological torment materializing. He's really slow and never lets go of the knife, nor does he take off the helmet. We've said pain so much, what else could it be? We know grief weighs down on someone hard and is very challenging to overcome. Maybe PH is that, a never-ending grief James is cursed with due to Mary's death. If so, the weighing down part is represented in the helmet and the knife PH has constantly, forcing him to struggle while moving towards his target, like how James's inner emotions causes internal battles, and those struggles while he makes his way to who he hopes is Mary. Going back to the game, we meet the girl that kicked the key away sitting atop a graffitied wall. She seems to have a bratty attitude if we look at her response to James saying she was the one who kicked the key away. Furthermore, the girl even goes as far to say James didn't love Mary, which makes no sense. How does this small child know about Mary's name and is able to say that with such confidence? She runs off behind the wall and James is left to himself. Before we jump to, oh, it's a manifestation, let's think for a bit. Obviously, this young girl doesn't seem to be hostile and just more annoying. She also appears to be unaffected by the town's powers, taking in what we learned about Silent Hill, and maybe a good foundation to say that this girl is of a higher innocence than Angela, Eddie, or James. Would make sense considering she's much younger as well. Moving along, we arrive at a new area, Rosewater Park. Arriving at the sign, James remembers the park as that park, wondering if this is where Mary could finally be. Rosewater is definitely a place she and James have been before, so this is a hint of hope for him. Rosewater contains a bunch of items for us, but most importantly is on the platform looking out into the lake. There's a woman leaning on the fence with short blonde hair, a small pink button cardigan, a pink leopard print skirt, and long dark boots. Contrary to James's hopeful call for Mary, this is not her. James is dumbfounded. This woman named Maria looks so close to Mary but so far. Her name is similar as well. Why is she seeming so teasing? By the end of the cutscene, she even appears clingy towards him. Unlike Eddie and Angela, we aren't sure why Maria is in Silent Hill. Eddie was brought here by something, Angela due to her mother, and James his wife Snow. Speaking of special places, James mentions the Lakeview Hotel as the second one, a place we haven't heard of before. When James starts to leave, Maria, as we said before, is clingy. She actually seems a bit disappointed at the idea that James would leave her there, something that none of the other characters have shown to James as of yet. Another tidbit, Maria also slips in that James may have hated Mary, and we end with James and Maria. She will now follow us wherever we go for now. 2001 video game design. Thinking time again! We've never even seen Maria at all before our entry into Rosewater Park, and she seems like a real person. However, considering James mistook her for Mary and was confused at how similar she was to her, writing it off as a coincidence feels strange, especially with how alike Mary and Maria are. James may be getting affected by Silent Hill more. It's messing with him, bringing in a twisted version of his late wife as a tease. The town knows he wants his wife, so it conjured up Maria. We'll have to wait on getting a concrete answer though, as we've just met her. Let's keep her on the back burner for now. After meeting the enigmatic woman, we leave Rosewater Park with her and venture off eastward, with our first stop along Nathan Avenue being Pete's Bolorama. In the area around it, we can get a steel pipe out of a car's trunk to use as a longer range melee weapon, and enter the bowling alley. When we do, Maria pops in saying she'll wait here due to her dislike of bowling. Well, sorry if we want to explore a bit. Seems like she's a little self-centered for that. With the town being in the state, we can be pretty sure that no bowling will be done here. Entering, we get a chill but iconic music track and see the girl along with Eddie enjoying a pizza pie. But where he managed to grab that is nowhere to be found. The girl asks Eddie about something he did, though Eddie denies what she suggests. The girl suddenly calls him a gutless fatso, affirming our assumptions of a ruder personality, but the rest of the conversation goes well. We overhear Eddie checking if the girl has found who she was looking for, Mary. Now Eddie knows of Mary, but barely as much as James or perhaps the girl too. Another cutscene plays, now just James and Eddie. After some quick back and forths, a bowling ball rolls along the floor, and we see the girl going through the front doors. James says to go after her, and we find out the girl's name is Laura. At least, that's what she said! Our green-coated protagonist then delivers the famously comedic lines,
"This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat pizza?"
But seriously, how can he? Eddie, eating pizza, reassures saying Laura is fine by herself, and that he'd only slow her down. James gives up, and we are out of the alley, leaving the pizza lover to his pie. The bowling alley can be viewed as a good representation of trying to grasp at good things while in the midst of a deep depression, with said depression being the town and James's rabbit hole. James is completely safe inside the alley, and it could be a moment of brief respite before he sends himself back into hell, probably forgetting that even happened later on. Little bouts of attempts at happiness are often for those with emotional traumas, even when they don't work for long, like the bowling alley section only being a few minutes. And, having that beautiful meme. Leaving the alley, we go up to Maria, who says she was wanting to get Laura, though she was too fast and lost her. If we try to continue out the way Maria was coming back from, she tells us that's the wrong way. Venturing into a back alley through a chain-link fence door, we arrive at a dead end, with our woman saying Laura went through there, but we can't possibly fit through. There's a door, however, which is locked, but Maria has the key to it. Opening in a sensual fashion, we enter into Heaven's Night, a strip club by the looks of it, though empty. Maria having the key probably signals that she works here, but we don't have any action with her, and the club simply allows us to get to the other side of the building. Sorry. Walking out into the open, we will enter into our second major level of Silent Hill 2, the Brookhaven Hospital. We will also see Laura running to the entrance, with Maria pointing it out. Going into a hospital is already important, knowing how James must be because of Mary's death. This could be Silent Hill trying to mess with him more. We know people's ventures into this town are seemingly different for each individual, so we'll have to see what it has for old James. In the hospital's first section of rooms, we can find some documents in the doctor's room. These explain a certain condition, maybe an illness, which the writer in question calls the other side. They can't decipher whether it's even an illness, and mention that, in their perception, it's where reality and unreality intersect. Apparently, anybody has the potential for it, along with adding in, the patient's imaginings are nothing but the inventions of a busy mind. Silent Hill is able to take somebody's inner coldness to transform it into reality, so could this doctor be talking about that? We also find a purple bowl key by the documents, for a box of some type. Back in the reception, there's also notes that we can read about earlier patients. Jack Davis, a usually model patient who suddenly attempted suicide 3 times. Joseph Barkin, who feels guilty for causing his daughter's death and has a history of psychotic break and delusions. Finally, Joshua Lewis, who has a strong persecution complex and is prone to battery and assault, possibly more victims of the town's psychological powers. Most of the other doors in this section are locked or unopenable, so we take to the staircase to ascend to the second floor. Upon entering, we are instantly met with a new enemy, the nurse, or specifically Bubblehead Nurse, a humanoid nurse-like entity with a swollen face whose shirt's chest has an undone button to show some cleavage, and they also wear a skirt. Oddly provocative, but not like we haven't seen something of a more mature narrative before. Remember Pyramid Head fiddling with the mannequins and lying figure? We may be able to assume there's some sexual desires being repressed by James. Obviously, Mary was stuck in the hospital for the duration of her sickness. With these women here, and inferring from PH and Maria, it could be a sign that James was deprived sexually while his wife was sick and couldn't do anything about it for so long. Sad, weird, and uncomfortable, but we shouldn't be surprised knowing Silent Hill. On this floor, we can find the men's and women's locker rooms, with the women's containing a new weapon, the shotgun, and a teddy which we can get a bent needle from. The men's contains a poster James calls stupid, and a bloody lab coat which has the examination room's key. In the ward wing in front of the stairway door, we can enter some of the wards, finding just bullets and health items, along with nurses we have to kill. Room M2 contains a lapis eye key, interestingly. Examining room 2, however, is unlocked for us, and entering into it will let us find a piece of carbon paper and a typewriter. And printed on it, though, is a poorly written rambling with no attention to grammar, along with a numerical code. This was likely written by someone deep on their other side, whatever it was for them. Exploring the hospital more, if we look at our map, we can see there's 3 examining rooms, one for each floor. Checking the one on the first floor revealed it was locked, and we get in using the key. The room itself is useless, but we can go in the lounge, which contains writing of a code to the 3rd floor patient hall on a board. Going up to the 3rd floor, we can't do much other than fight 2 nurses outside the patient wing. Entering into said wing will bring us to a long hallway with many doors to much smaller one-person rooms. The first 2 aren't interesting, but the 3rd triggers a cutscene. James looks around the room while Maria takes a rest on a naked hospital bed. She plays it off as just a hangover and takes some pills, with James letting her lay on the bed and take a breather. Ignoring Maria's probable nod to have James lay with her, he says he'll look for Laura, and we're off by ourselves once more. There's also a roof key sitting on a nearby nightstand. James seeing Maria, someone he easily mistook for Mary, lay on a hospital bed wouldn't be the best thing for him. As Maria is so similar to Mary, this could be a point towards James's grieving memories of Mary's final period in the hospital, just twisted into the town's version of it, his own other side, even though it's not the specific hospital Mary was kept at. If we play into the Maria is fake option, we could guess this, but if she's not, it could all just be a creepy coincidence, but since we know James is mentally stricken, it's hard to say. Through the rest of the wing, most doors have their locks broken, but the last one contains a box on a bed fitted with codes and a lock. On the wall, written in blood, is, "Luis, I'll take care of you forever. It's my destiny." We can use the lapis eye key to remove a small lock, and the purple bolt key for the box's lock itself, though we still have 2 combinations to go. The imprint code doesn't work on the combination lock, but it does for the keypad, leaving us with one final piece to solve this puzzle. We'll have to leave it alone for now. With this, we've already gotten basically all we need to do with the rest of the hospital done, so it's time to venture to the roof, which is the 4th floor. On the top, we don't see much other than an elevator control room. By the way, all the elevators aren't working. We can also find what seems to be a patient's diary here, with entries from May 9th to the 13th. On May 9th, it's a rainy, peaceful day in the hospital. May 10th, they talk with the doctor and ponder their own personal strengths. 11th, it's rainy, their meds made them sick, and they perceive themselves as not who they want to be when on them. 12th, they believe they're just a bother in the hospital, saying it's too hard. 13th, they're released, ending on an I, the start of an empty sentence. Going to the control room, we are greeted by Pyramid Head once again, who corners us to the fence. He swings his knife, slices James, and sends him, along with the fence, back into the hospital. We wake up with low health, and inside the special treatment room on the 3rd floor. There's 4 cells we can go inside, with the 3rd one containing blood writing on the wall, a numeric code, which appears to have been written for safekeeping by whoever was in here. This code, when entered into the combination lock, unlocks the puzzle box, giving us a hair! Yay! What a reward! Kinda makes sense considering how this hospital is. At first, this seems absolutely useless, but if we go into this floor shower room, the drain has something stuck in it. We can't reach down there, but the bent needle is shaped like a hook, and the hairpiece is long, so combining it lets us reach down there. We pull out an elevator key, finally allowing use of those damn elevators. Going down the nearby one, we can now search through the 1st floor's wing. Let's take a moment to give some thought about this hospital and James while we're at it. This hospital definitely isn't in great shape, and all of the rooms are dilapidated and messed up. With how Silent Hill messes with people's realities, this could be a manifestation of how James views these places. We may be able to assume Mary wasn't treated too well in whatever other building, at least in James's perception, and began to grow a dislike for them overall. He probably felt further disconnected from it, and likely visited less and less as a result of the perceived maltreatment of his wife. It may be a reach, of course, but we can't deny James's other side as being from his subconscious. Back to the game, the 1st floor wing contains more ward-like rooms, with Laura playing with teddy bears in the corner of one. James gets her attention and asks what she knows about Mary. It takes some convincing, but she eventually says she was friends with her, adding that she met her at the hospital last year? Well, anyway, James lets Laura come with them, wanting to get her to a safer area. It doesn't take long before she remembers something she forgot though, revealing it's a letter from Mary. She takes us to the 2nd examining room and tricks us by locking us in there while fleshy masses hanging from metal box frames float towards James. Laura runs off, that's not a little brat, and we are left with the flesh lips. These are long, fleshy monsters attached to bed-like frames with a head pointing at the bottom with a mouth. They also have 2 feet things. Symbolically, we can see Mary being represented here as a bedridden sick woman who was stuck and unable to reach any freedom. The bottom mouth right now is a bit ambiguous. It's a stretch, but maybe Mary was verbally harsh towards the end. We start with 2 of them floating towards us, and we have to shoot them down to get out of here. They each have quite a bit of health, so it takes a couple close shotgun blasts to kill one. When they attack us, they appear to grab James with their feet and strangle him for a short time. When they die, they simply move their feet up and sit still. When 3 of them are dead, we get a short scene of what seems to be the POV of Mary rolling through the hallway on a gurney. James wakes up in the garden, though we're boxed off into a very small portion of it. When we go through the double doors, the hospital has rusted and deteriorated even further, with doors and beds covered in tarp, and the overall look being much more grim and strange. We are likely in the other side version of the hospital, now completely overcome by James's fears, grief, and traumatic memories. The first floor wing doesn't contain much interest, but the elevators are still in operation, so we can use them to go up to the second. One of the rooms here has a piece of its wall ripped off, revealing a painting of hands reaching up to a hole, which has a dry cell battery and the basement storeroom key. There's also a burnt-looking piece of paper talking about being locked up in the basement's basement and losing a ring in the process. Other than that, not much for the wards here. We also come across, at the end of the wing of the day room, a fridge laying on its back that James deems too heavy to open. We'll have to leave it here for now, so on to the 3rd floor. Straight from the start, we see the door next to the elevator has a woman inside of it, with the arms being 3D and sticking out. It's unclear if that's a real woman or not. In the rooms, we can find another piece of paper mentioning a lady of the door, probably the woman we saw before. Not much else to note, but this is the wing where Maria was left in, so let's check it. There, however, is no Maria. We can hear the sound of someone breathing, though, along with a heartbeat while we're there. There's also drugs on the nightstand, probably the ones Maria took earlier. The rest of the wing is useless, so we can go to the other hallway north of it, and the stairway door here is unlocked. Going into it, the other level's doors here are broken, but we can make it down to the basement storeroom. Here we see piles of things, and a shelf with bloody handprints which we can move to reveal a secret area. When we go into it, however, Maria comes through the door, and James thinks is Mary for a split second. Maria isn't very happy with James's reaction to seeing her again, with us getting a rare moment where she actually seems pissed. She asserts her view that James is supposed to protect her and asks about Laura. Interestingly, Maria feels obligated to make sure she's okay, citing she's all alone. With that, we are now once again with Maria by our side. Going down into the secret area, we get a copper ring, the one the writer of the paper earlier mentioned in the basement's basement. We move back out to the staircase with angry Maria and go to the 3rd floor, and over to the elevator. When we go to our destination, though, a radio transmission of a game show comes in from seemingly nowhere. The host calls his show Trick or Treat, and also knows James's name, oddly enough. He asks a series of 3 questions, which we can't answer: the name of Silent Hills Amusement Park, the name of the murderer who killed a brother and sister, and the name of one street you can take from Southvale to Paleville. The host says to go to the 3rd floor storeroom to get our prizes, says his goodbye, and we're left in confusion. Going to the 2nd, we can enter the day room with our woman accompanying us, and together we can open the fridge. Maria takes a jab at James, saying he should be the strong one since he's a man. Looking in the fridge, we can find a lead ring, which Maria also jokes to James about holding, making him give a funny sounding, thanks. We can put these rings on the woman in the door's arms on the 3rd floor. Also, if we choose to do the questions, the jewelry box would contain a bunch of ammo and healing items. Opening the door, we get another stairway. However, we can only go down, down, down. There's one final long deep stairway at the end, which has a door that leads to a long gray tight hallway. After some walking, Pyramid Head appears behind us, now with a spear and is faster, and the chase is on. PH will target Maria as she's the closest to him, and we need to make an anxiety-filled run for it towards the elevator at the very end of the twisting hallway without having her die. However, when we make it to the elevator, it closes early, and leaves Maria stuck outside while James helplessly tries to pry the doors open. PH stabs Maria one final time, killing her, and the doors close fully, leaving James to have a moment to himself while the elevator lifts to the 1st floor. Let's think. The scene where an unhappy Maria recoups with James was saved for this point. All this time, she kept mentioning how James only cares for Mary and sees James as an unworthy protector. Even from the beginning, when James began walking away from Maria without taking her with him, we could always see a glimpse of James not really caring, or more so having trouble showing it. Now that Maria's dead, James no longer has anyone to give him company. Just like when Mary died, he was all alone and fell into a mental rabbit hole. It's a grim reminder of his late wife and James's inability to save her and keep her with him. With Maria, it's not only that issue, but also the struggle of what seemed to be showing enough want to show he cares. His brain is already so foggy and messed up from his experiences in Silent Hill so far, and from his wife's death, he can't help but sit in pondering silence. He is not only feeling grief, but possibly guilt now as well due to blaming himself for not saving Maria. We might be able to connect that to Mary too. Pyramid Head also came back in a deadlier form. He was faster and had a spear rather than some huge knife weighing him down. He came back stronger, like how negative, powerful emotions do when you try to suppress them too much. James acknowledged PH originally in the apartments and managed to avoid and ignore him temporarily, and he came back worse, directly taking something away from him this time. Maria accused James of being careless, and she wasn't exactly wrong. Back into the game, the door is open. James slowly stands up, and we're back in the first room we entered when we got to this level, only its other side written. There's no threats, just James and a soft, melancholic piano playing in the background. In a room in the lobby, we can get the key to the exit, and a map with 2 points marked, Rosewater Park, and some place for a letter and a wrench. The map has writing on it, saying those who are stared at from the abyss are strong enough to stare at it. With this key, we are now able to get out of this place, completing Brookhaven Hospital. James dwells on the fact he wasn't able to save Maria, and that Lars ran off. He keeps strong with finding Mary, the only piece of hope he has left. Venturing outside, we begin to make our way over to where the letter and wrench are located. Along the way, we have to go through a gated door which leads to a long, high-ceiling, fence-floored hallway. Underneath the floor, huge monsters crawling along with their hands roam around, named mandarins. They can't do much to hurt us, and can do so only when we stand under them long enough. They stick their hand-mouth tongues at us. For symbolism, maybe it could represent being stuck under some form of anguish and trying to get out but failing. Nothing else to really look at though. Later on in the town, we can enter Neely's bar again and view a disturbing message written in blood on the wall. If you really want to see Mary, you should just die, but you might be heading to a different place than Mary, James. Clearly, this is the town directly telling James he's screwed. He's gone so deep that he's better off finding Mary as a dead man, just like how Mary is a dead woman. They'd both be corpses, so they'd be able to see each other. However, James would probably be in a sort of hell and Mary in heaven, a stark contrast between two people and their fates. James is a sinner and Mary is the pure one. When we reach the letter and wrench, we pick up the tool, and the letter looks to be authored by a doctor about a patient. The letter tells us the location of the key to the Silent Hill Historical Society, at the foot of a praying woman statue inside a box underground. It speaks of their patient burying the key there, and the author seeing something which caused everyone never to go to the society again. The letter ends with the writer wishing God to have mercy on James's soul if he dared to continue. With that in mind, we now go off into Rosewater Park. Nothing has changed here aside from a lack of a Maria and finding the box. James digs it up with just his hands, unscrews with the wrench, and gets the key to the society, an old bronze key. When we reach the society, it's not too big. However, it's greatly damaged and way out of shape for any operation. In the second room there are paintings, though only 2 are still hanging. In the back wall is Pyramid Head, standing with his spear in front of several hanging metal frame boxes, housing probably corpses. The painting is titled Misty Day, What Remains of the Judgment. A picture sitting here of PH is not exactly something one would see on an ordinary day in Silent Hill. James has been greatly affected by its other side, and now it's infecting his surroundings, and causing his reality to become more distorted as he goes deeper and deeper. In the next room, we encounter more photos, though the one on the back end is particularly creepy. It's a picture of a small box room with a deep square hole right smack in the center, nothing else. However, the most prominent feature of this room is the massive hole in the other wall. It reveals a dark, extremely long, and foreboding tunnel, with the horrifying sound of some horn coming out of it repeatedly. We have no choice but to walk and run down it, and descend even further into madness. James has officially locked himself in his own personal hell, and there is no other way than down. The sounds of the horn get louder until we eventually reach a door with nothing hostile waiting for our souls, thank God. Opening it, we enter a small room with a document from all the way back on September 11th, 1820 about prisoner C-221. The rest is illegible though. Going forward, we enter some maze-like hallways with lying figures out and about, and after, we enter the room in the photo we saw earlier, the hole. There is no other way to progress other than to jump down the hole like any perfectly sane human being with care for their well-being would. James does so, and miraculously survives, falling down into a cylindrical brick well. Inspecting the wall, most of it is wall, but there is one area which feels off to James. Using a melee weapon, we can break it open and go through the door behind it. In here, there's a few more cramped hallways, along with a door on the side which has two more, one already being open. The open door shows what seems to be a second hole, locked off by a prison door acting as the floor. In the room beside this, it's once again a small square compartment, with a spiral writing key placed in there. Grabbing it, our flashlight finally decides to die, which has us make use of the dry cell battery we picked up in the hospital. When we put it in though, the room fills with a hell of a lot of large beetle-like creatures named creepers, who run around and continually hurt James. We can kill some, but they'll keep respawning infinitely, so no point. We have to use the keypad next to the door to unlock it and get out, which has 3 lit up buttons among the 9. Punching in the numbers in a certain combo will get the door to open, and we're out. We can open the floor door in the open room, jump down once more, and land inside of somewhere, a cafeteria. We meet Eddie again, this time deep inside of his own insanity too. He has a revolver now, and even mumbles, "Killing a person ain't no big deal." And when James points out the dead body, Eddie blurts out that that person had it coming. His reason for murdering him? He came at him and made fun of him with his eyes, which is nowhere near an appropriate reason to take a life. He even mentions a dog had it coming, though he refutes, saying it was a joke soon after. Eddie, for some reason, then adds that the corpse was dead when we got here, which goes against what he said earlier. He leaves, leaving us in the cafeteria. Searching around, we can find a tablet named Gluttonous Pig, referring to Eddie. There's nothing more here, and we go through the double doors, entering the third major level, the Toluca Prison. The prison itself consists of one large floor, along with a small basement as seen on the map. It is also very tight spaced and doesn't give any real room to run around in. In the apartments, we could run in long hallways. The hospital was a bit more open, but this is really where it's at in terms of claustrophobia. And the ambiance of banging, rumbling, and distress isn't making it any nicer. Symbolically, James is now trapped in his delusions, imprisoned, might we say. The level could be one huge representation of James's seemingly endless journey through hell, and that he's literally stuck in it. He wants to get out, but like with the first level, he simply can't. Only this time, it's way more traumatic for him. Back then, he was only toe deep in his guilt, grief, and deprivation, but now he's chest deep and sinking. Inside of the subterranean prison, the southern cell hall is full of lying figures, with one in the hall and one in a cell which will never get out. All of the cell doors are unopenable, aside from one by the end of the hall which contains a wax doll. Inside of this cell is a lot of religious occult-focused books along with strange symbols drawn into the walls. Whoever was in here was quite the crazed religious fanatic, a theme that was explored in the first and third Silent Hill games, and is mostly absent in this one. Exiting the hall and continuing north, the cell hall on this side contains no entities, except the sounds of something that we can't see. And the one cell we can enter is full of art supplies and has some drawings on it. 436 people at a recital, a burning building named Burning Man, and a woman in flight. Further into a hall, there's a cell holding the tablet of Oppressor, which we aren't exactly sure what it could represent. With current knowledge, this could represent Pyramid Head, since he's definitely a central oppressive force within SH2, and is actively trying to kill James whenever he appears. In the western hallway, in the middle, there is a door which leads to what looks like a bathroom section, one side having showers and another toilets. On the latter side, we can find a third tablet named Seductress. These could be referring to Maria based on what we know right now, but also maybe Angela if we go all the way back to her second cutscene in the apartments. She was clearly frightened when James stepped towards her, and using our hypothesis of her having a PTSD episode, she could be an abuse victim being made an unwilling seductress to a possible abuser. Back into the hallway, checking the map, there is another smaller hallway to the extreme west of the prison, which we can enter into using the northernmost door. In there, whatever was in the middle of the room is destroyed, allowing entry. The door next to this room is the same layout, only the booth in the center is there. There's an item on the desk, which is a lighter. Going back to the small hallway, most of the doors aren't working, except for the bathroom doors, the gate, and the entrance to what seems to be an office. In the office, a lying figure walks around, and there's also a magazine which details a tragedy that occurred in November 1918 in Toluca Lake. A ship named Little Baroness mysteriously disappeared without reason along the 14 passengers inside it. Since then, nothing of the ship or the passengers had ever been recovered. Remember the horn-like sound we heard back in the Historical Society? Well, that horn is reminiscent of a foghorn, something ships blow while deep in fog to communicate with each other. That creepy horn in the Society's tunnel could be a reference to the Baroness sinking. The office also contains a weapons room where we can acquire a hunting rifle. It's slow and we can't move while preparing it, but it's extremely accurate and damaging. Good as an alternative to the shotgun when it's low on ammo and or long range is needed. Outside of the office, and through the gate, we can encounter a trapdoor in the floor. We can't really open it without a handle though. Let's try and explore the rest of the prison, the eastern hallway. Here, there's only one area we can go into, which is an outdoor area, all the way underground. Makes no sense, and even creepier is there's a gallows right in the center. The sound of something running periodically come and goes, though we never see what's running. On the back of the gallows is a painting of two pyramid head-like figures standing on sides of an unfortunate soul being hanged. Written on the top is, "I give you blood to atone for the 3 sins." There are 3 square depressions for the tablets to be fitted into, which are the sins. There's the gluttonous pig, Eddie, probably for killing people, the oppressor, maybe Pyramid Head, and the seductress, who we aren't 100% sure of yet. Putting all 3 tablets in correctly, we hear a man screaming in pain off screen, and a horseshoe appears in the door. We take it, and the prison is fully searched. The only unexplored place is a trapdoor, so we venture over there and proceed to do something honestly incredibly smart. James uses the lighter to melt the wax stall, enter the door's handle area, and sticks the horseshoe into there. As the wax hardens, the horseshoe literally becomes a handle, letting him open it. For a man so deep in his trauma and mental craziness, we gotta applaud him for thinking that well. And what's under it? A hole! The 3rd one, to be exact. Falling down, we land in a very short hall, the rest locked off. The 4 doors are broken, but James notes a rotten smell from each of them. The next room, we enter into a morgue of sorts. Inspecting the corpse on the bed, James ponders if that corpse moved or if he imagined it. How comforting. He also points out a horrific smell coming from the holes in the wall. The next room, yet another hole. A corpse on a bed is pointed towards it. Maybe bodies were dropped down into a pit and disposed of. Jumping down this hole, we get put into a tiny underground opening, hearing a distorted, highly unsettling scream of indeterminate origin. We open the door in front of us, and another hole is there. We jump down, somehow not breaking any of our insanely full resilient bones, and land in front of an elevator. It closes on us when we enter, and a long ride ensues, all the way down to the rock bottom. There's no more holes after this, but even though the prison is finished, we now have to deal with the labyrinth. When we enter, lying figures are sprinkled about, and when we fight, we hear horns similar to the ones in the tunnel. This time, they're much longer, and a higher pitch layer comes in as well. Honestly, the most terrifying ambiance out there. The first floor of the labyrinth is just holes, but we can find 2 other levels on each side. The right side shows a huge hole with a ladder going down to a more earthen underside flooded with water. The left has 2 ladders which go down to an octagonal, tight hallway with mandarins underneath. Big P also patrols the area with his spear, but he's easy to avoid. In the center of the hallway, we can go through a door which enters into what could be Pyramid Head's lair or headquarters. Here, we can actually, unironically, get the knife he wielded in the apartments. It heavily slows us down and takes a long time to use, but it's stupidly powerful and even stuns PH if we manage to get a hit. Knowing that Pyramid Head is a total manifestation of James's guilt and suffering, grief, and trauma, the Great Knife is probably how he feels holding all of it. We've seen it with PH, and now it's being shown with James. It's a heavy weight for him. Analysis aside for a bit, the other end of the octagon hallway is a second ladder of the 2 we saw on the first floor, so now we have the hole in the ground to search through. It leads to another ladder, which reveals a plush-shaped room with a stone with several faces on a platform in the middle. We can rotate it up, down, left, or right, and the correct choice of faces unlocks a secret metal room in front of it, and another staircase after that one. Going down, we meet Maria, somehow again, inside of what looks like a prison cell. This makes literally no sense considering she was killed or at least severely injured by Pyramid Head earlier. James is very surprised, asking if she was hurt badly. Maria, however, has zero recollection of this, calling him silly, despite what he says. She also reminds James of the time he and what we assume was Mary forgot a videotape in a hotel, Lakeview Hotel, which makes him even more confused. Her response to James's question about her identity is also intriguing. She is Maria, if he wants her to be. The conversation goes, Maria assures James that she's indeed real and teases him, with James just going with telling her to wait in that cell, and we're free to move. There's something off about Maria. The fact that she's still alive greatly hinders our theory of her being a real person. When we add in the fact that she appears to know about James and Mary's past, it's pretty hard to affirm this is all a coincidence. Mary could genuinely be another manifestation of James's strong desire to see Mary, to want to love her again, to fill that gap inside of him. He is a broken man, and Mary being with him can fix it, but if she's dead, why is he here? How did that letter even get there? It all makes no sense. James could genuinely be imagining things at this point. The letter could just be a figment of James's brain which brought him here on false beliefs. He's convincing himself that his wife is alive while going deeper into Silent Hill, but it's becoming more apparent that it's all a facade. The theme of spiraling downwards is also present in the Labyrinth metaphorically. Moving on, we can get a wire cutter from an open electrical box in the puzzle room, and use it on a wired-off doorway in the first set of hallways. After this is a lot of maze exploring, so it only wastes time to explain it all. After, we come across a door on the upper level along with a torn newspaper page on the ground. It reads that Thomas O., a former lumberjack, was murdered around midnight via stabbing, and that such stabbing was probably a homicide. He also had a history of drunkenness and violence. The next hallway shows a door covered in newspapers that are from the game's current date, strangely. James then hears what seems to be Angela's voice screaming for her father not to do something, and he walks into the room. Sure enough, Angela's there, sitting on the floor while a huge, fleshy abomination attached to what seems to be a bed frame hovers over her, and a boss fight ensues. This is Abstract Daddy. What he does is slowly walk over to you, and if he's in range to attack, strangles James and sucks his head, using an opening on his underside. He has plenty of health but no other attacks, making this boss battle similar to our second pH encounter, running around and shooting. Let's also analyze the room we're in. The room is made of a skin-like substance, making our footsteps sound wet and slimy, and there's many holes in the wall. These holes have pistons slowly going in and out of them, which could pertain to some form of sexual abuse towards Angela, since she's also in here. She stays sitting in fear and trauma throughout the whole fight, understandably so. Abstract Daddy is a manifestation of her dad. We can assume this from the "No, Daddy, please don't" we heard before. The newspaper about Thomas O.'s death could show that Angela killed her own father due to continued abuse, as it was right before the battle, and that her dad's name was Thomas. After AD is hurt enough, James attempts to comfort Angela, but she refuses with a terrified yell. She gets up, violently kicks AD 3 times before grabbing a box TV in the room and slamming it onto AD, officially killing him. Despite our efforts to help her, Angela still isn't happy at all, continuing to be scared of her surroundings and having serious trust issues. Asking James what he wants, she reinforces on him just wanting one thing: sex, probably. Angela also references her dad's abuse with "beat me up like he always did," and calls James a disgusting, selfish pig. He makes her sick. Even though James killed the manifestation of Angela's dad, through his perspective that is, Angela still sees him as another useless man. She was treated so badly by one that should have nurtured and protected her for her whole life, that it warped her view of men, making it much more misandric. When James responds to Angela's question about Mary, saying she was ill, she calls him a liar. Like how Maria, though in a more joking tone, when we met her suggested James hated her, Angela has the same thoughts. She leaves with also adding he probably found another woman, but James denies this and we're alone once again. James isn't that great of a person when it comes to helping those mentally, obviously. So, we can confirm our theories of Angela being abused and her instability stemming from that, but what did AD look like in her eyes? She didn't suffer what James went through, so James's POV of AD was different. The form of the entity is a double meaning. The bent-over person on top of a smaller mass is likely the dad abusing Angela sexually on a bed. The bed, for James, could be relating to Mary. Was she bedridden while sick in the hospital for so long? The mass, overall, could be James's wife stuck on a bed, rather than abuse if we go for his interpretations. Angela killing her dad is also something of interest. Remember the tablet of the seductress? The sin the tablet was atoning for is also clearer. The sin of murdering one's dad, patricide. We'll get in more depth with Angela later. Moving forward, the next set of rooms is a puzzle, and to save time, we'll go through this quickly. One room has 6 hung corpses, each with a crime they committed, and another has 6 pullable nooses and a plate with a riddle. This riddle changes with each riddle difficulty set before the game. Here, we need to pull the correct noose to free the wrongly convicted man. Doing so reveals the key to the persecuted. This allows us to unlock the pair of handcuffs on a gate and a valve, and the latter can be turned to open the former. We go back to normal Labyrinth stuff and find a locked gate door, along with a normal looking door, which leads into Maria's cell. Unfortunately, Maria is dead again, and James is crushed by this, clearly showing frustration in himself to yet again fail to save Maria. She lays on the mattress with a bloodied right eye, and James sits in front of it deep in self-loathing. He reminds himself about Mary once again. Unlike the first death, we have no idea how she died here. She's lying on a dead bed though, which could be a grim reminder for James about his late wife's death on a hospital bed from her illness. We saw this type of thing back when she laid on the bed in the hospital, and now it's even more apparent. This theme of things growing worse is the same with being lost in a maze, literally and mentally, the apartment and then the labyrinth. The guilt he first felt with failing Maria in the hospital has been amplified 10 times over, and when it becomes consumed by such feelings, it destroys one's psyche. James is then back out into the labyrinth's halls, and the gate has been unlocked. When we go through, we happen upon a graveyard catacomb room. The readable tombs include Walter Sullivan's name for some reason, along with 3 of the 4 people who wandered into the town: James Sunderland, Angela Orozco, and Eddie Dombrowski. We can't enter Angela or Eddie's graves, but we can jump down ours. When we do, we get to a long, foggy hallway, which gets covered in blood at the end. The door enters into a freezer room with Eddie standing at the back looking down at a corpse of someone he killed. James asks what he's up to, and Eddie begins venting his deep frustrations about being made fun of and bullied for how he looks. Recounting what those around him said, he then says that it doesn't matter who you are, it's the same once you're dead. A corpse can't laugh. He declares anyone who makes fun of him is to be killed by him, and James inquires if he's gone nuts. This is taken wrongly by Eddie due to his overbearing paranoia, even though James says otherwise. Eddie yells that he'll kill our green-coated friend too and shoots him in the shoulder, engaging in a boss fight. We are forced to kill Eddie in self-defense. He has 2 attacks, punching at close range and shooting with his revolver. After enough damage is dealt, Eddie retreats into a larger room and we pursue. The room is filled with hanging meat slabs with cloth attached to their undersides, reflecting Eddie's overweight body. The freezer room in general, as Eddie's other side, is probably his cold and careless demeanor towards killing others manifesting. Eddie resumes educating James of his troubled past, saying he was picked on, spit on, and laughed at his whole life. He also recalls killing a dog, even going as far to say he enjoyed it. It tried to chew its own guts while dying. He also shot a football player in the leg and fled the scene. James tells Eddie he needs help, but to no avail. Eddie says he and James are the same since the town called them. He appears from the fog, shouting, "Let's party!" before the final battle begins. The attacks are the same, Eddie just has significantly more health. When he's killed, he lets out a scream of agony before dropping dead. James is overcome with the realization that he killed another human, likely filled with disgust for doing what Eddie did. He's no better. He reminds himself of Mary once more before leaving the freezer room, mysteriously coming back to the surface on a shipping dock. We find a wooden boat with 2 oars, and we are alone as we sail to the other side of Toluca Lake. There is nothing but fog, James, his boat, and his thoughts, a brief moment of respite. He's probably unable to think of anything rather than finding Mary. He's gone through so many inhumane and indescribable things, mentally and physically. The boat ride isn't too long either, and we come up to another smaller dock, and we have arrived at the Lakeview Hotel, the 4th and final major level of Silent Hill 2. James observes the hotel from the deck, and we move through the bridge onto the front yard of the building. We can already find an item outside on top of a fountain, named Little Mermaid, but there's nothing else out there. Inside, we can find the guest map right beside the doors. This is actually the backside of the hotel, with "Waiting for you" written on room 312, the room James and Mary stayed in. This is the special place of the Sunderlands. The goal we have been trudging through hell for is finally within reach. Exploring the first floor, most rooms' doors are broken, but there are a few which we can enter, with 2 of them being the double doors to the lobby. We can find a paper laying on a receptionist's table, a note informing James that the videotape Maria mentioned is sitting in the first floor office. The gift shop's doors are broken, and when we interact with the front doors, James refuses to open them. In the front of the staircase to the second floor is a sort of larger music box, likely what Little Mermaid and 2 other boxes are used for. On the eastern end of the first floor hall is a restaurant named Lakeshore. Inside, we find a fish key and also encounter Laura startling James by suddenly playing a piano chord. We find Laura is here to rejoice with Mary too, and she found out through a letter, which she gives to us. It reads that Mary left it with Rachel, her nurse, to give to Laura after she died. Laura actually misinterpreted the quiet, beautiful place as the hotel rather than heaven. She, unfortunately, erroneously believes Mary is still alive years after her death. After wishing her well not to be hard on the sisters, she also touches on James. Mary wants Laura to try and form a positive connection with him, citing that underneath an occasional unfriendly attitude is a very sweet person. Mary states that she wished to adopt Laura if she was healthy, she loves her like a daughter, and wishes her a happy 8th birthday. They were friends as well. When James asks how old Laura is, her birthday was apparently last week. This is either a time mess-up from Silent Hill's powers, or Mary wrote this letter in advance before her death. Laura mentions that she and Mary talked a lot about the town, as well as another letter, which she forgot. She goes to find it, and we're by ourselves. When we exit the restaurant, there are 2 smaller abstract daddies in the hotel's hallway. They have less health, so they're much easier to kill. Best to take them out now before they give us any trouble. For the sake of time, and because the juicy bits are close to being analyzed, we'll go over the hotel pretty quickly. The first floor doesn't have much else to give, so it's off to the second. If we use the lobby staircase and side doors, we come across another hallway like the first. The western side contains a staff-only door to a room that has a briefcase. This can be unlocked with the fish key. This gives us the key to room 204. The hall with all the rooms on the same side has all the doors broken except 204 and 202. The first room has a key to the employee elevator, and 202 has a locked briefcase and a picture with marker drawn all over it. Moving on, the key will allow us to access the new room, which has an elevator, of course, and a storage locker. The elevator will ring its alarm due to our weight being over 1 person, so we have to dump all our stuff in the locker. We'll get it back later. We go down to the first level, get an employee map, and in the pantry in the back we can acquire the Snow White music box, 2 of 3 we need. The first office on this floor will also bring us to the videotape and a can opener sitting inside a safe. We use the staircase, go down to the basement, and encounter mannequins in the hallways. It's pretty easy to dodge them though, so no worry. The boiler room contains the bar key, and the kitchen has a closed can. We use a can opener and grab a light bulb. Why the hell are bulbs kept in this? We go to the bar the kitchen is for, and even though we have technically enough light and a key, we're still not allowed to open the door. Either James is going blind or something. We need the lamp, so we put the bulb in and get out. In the elevator next to the bar door, there's a can of thinner. Now we can make our way back through Lakeview and get our stuff from the locker. We back travel over to room 202, use the thinner on the picture, and find the code to the briefcase, a random 4-letter word. Inside the case is a Cinderella music box. These 3 boxes go into the large one standing in front of the lobby staircase, which, when correctly placed, plays a nice song. This also gives us the key to the gate blocking the 3rd floor, which we go to use. 312, special place, is conveniently placed right at the start for us. It is a 1-room suite but contains a large comfy bed, tables, comfy chairs, a TV, and a sofa. Quite a nice stay the Sunderlands had. Mary is not to be found once more, not even Maria. All that we can do is play the videotape, which James does. The tape is mostly in black and white. Mary jokes with James asking if he's taping again, and says she loves it over at Lakeview. She adds that it used to be a sacred place, which she understands. Mary wishes for James to bring her there again before coughing. The specific scene was also shown briefly when we met Maria. The tape glitches, and we find James kissing a sick, bedridden Mary before grabbing a pillow and smothering her, killing her. The tape fades to static before ending. What we're left with James is sitting slumped over in the chair, looking down plainly at the ground, deep in guilt, regret, and mental agony. As a somber and calm piano track plays in the background, the camera gradually revolves around our protagonist-revealed murderer as he attempts to process the horrific reminder of what he did. James killed his wife. This is the darkness in him. This is what was wrong with him. She never died of a disease. That was a lie which he told himself and others all this time while in Silent Hill. While, yes, she was sick with it, James wanted to escape the reality of his ex. He was likely still in delusion about the letter he had back in the beginning. It never even existed because, again, a dead person can't write a letter, and the writing disappears after Eddie's death. James is frozen still and quiet. He is unable to do anything else, as his failed fleeing from his actions catches up to him in merciless fashion. If he wasn't mentally gone, he is now. He repeats his victim's name once more, but to what avail? Also, remember when we came up to a bloody corpse in front of a TV in the apartments? That could be interpreting as some serious foreshadowing to this event. To make matters even worse and more depressing, Laura comes in, asking if James has found Mary and to come along if not. He breaks the news to Laura, but she calls him a liar, though asks if it was because of the illness. James has no other option but to be honest to Laura, saying he killed her. A long period of silence ensues and Laura lashes out at James, calling him a killer. She demands that he gives her back and stands on her original thoughts that he never cared about Mary. This is a good time to remember Laura's only 8 years old. She likely isn't old enough to fully understand and process loss, let alone murder. This makes everything so many more times sick and twisted. James slowly gets up, apologizes, and tells Laura that Mary just isn't here. She leaves through the door and never to be seen again. Also, remember how Laura's birthday was last week, and they met at the hospital last year? James was almost definitely in delusion about Mary's state of death. If she was alive as early as a few weeks ago, estimating from Laura's hotel letter, then she must have been killed pretty recently. James miserably drops down into the chair, apologizing. There is nothing left for him to do. This is until his radio activates, and we hear Mary's voice mysteriously begging him to come find her over static. We can go out into the hotel hallway, and when we do, we find the hotel has seriously deteriorated. It is dripping water and the whole look is much more damp and dirty. Water drips from the ceiling. There is also a repeating, distorted music track, representing James's overwhelming and unending guilt for killing Mary. It keeps coming back to him, hence the song's simple repetition no matter how hard he tries. Also, on the topic of Mary's letter, it's gone now. It literally does not exist anymore, confirming that it was a hallucination. Remember the tablet of the oppressor from the prison? The 3 sins the tablets represented were of those: Angela, seductress, Eddie, gluttonous pig, and a third person. Obviously, Laura has no sin in her. The only other character we could pin this on is James, as he oppressed and killed his wife. We don't have much to get done before we reach the end. In the reading room on the 2nd floor, though, we can find headphones. James puts them on, listening to a conversation between him and his doctor while a bed floats in view. We hear James the most upset we've heard him, in disbelief that he's going to lose his wife. The doctor informs there's no treatment for her condition and that 6 months to 3 years is how long she may live for. That is all we can look at here, so it's time to go down to the basement. As we go, the doors of the hotel's West Suite Hall take us to the East Hall, and we are greeted with a further damaged building. Patches cover the wall and floor, likely ash from a fire. As James comes to reality, so does the hotel. The hotel may have not been real this whole time. It was burned and inoperable. The town just made it seem like it hadn't. Now that his memories are no longer repressed, he is forced to see what it really is. The basement is flooded with nearly hip-high waters, and also in similar condition to upstairs. Lying figures are also swimming around. After traveling through the bar in the mini labyrinth, we come across Angela for the final time. She stands on a fiery staircase looking at a painting of a stretched human-shaped mass of skin. The figure also has a burned crotch area. This is for the CSA she went through. The genitalia is now burned and cut off, removed from her view due to the horrible acts she was a victim of. James walks up to her. Angela mistakes him for her mother, but he steps back down the stairs. Angela is finally happy, or at least relieved, to see who she's been looking for, saying she can now rest. She puts her hands on James's face and shoulders and is swept back into the previous mindsets we've seen her in before. Angela thanks James for saving her, but wishes he just left her alone. Even her mother, the one she's been looking for, said she deserved what happened. We don't know if Angela's mom abused her as well or was just a bystander, but that basically means Angela's whole family was against her. She tells James she's not worth it, to not pity her. We get another glimpse of her more cynical side, though, with her questioning of whether or not James was truly a sight of help for her. James just looks down at the burning floor, lost in thought of what he should do or respond with. Angela is now completely lost. There is no helping her, as sad and terrible as that is. She is in the deepest phases of suicidal ideation and soon-to-be action. Angela requests that James give back the knife we got at the apartments, but he denies. She thinks James just wants to off himself with it, but says he would never do so. Notice the emphasis on myself. That extra stress on that word implies that James wouldn't kill his own person, but rather other people. This fits with the fact that he took Mary's life and also Eddie's. Angela begins to ascend the staircase, and James comments that it's hot as hell in here, as more fire comes to life between the two. She comments that it was always like this for her. Her life, in her view, was constantly a living hell. She never enjoyed a single second of it. She keeps walking up and disappears into the flames. We can now go back through the door we came in. This time it leads to the staircase to the first floor. We go through the holes where we found the videotape through another with mandarins and end up in a small room. There is a save point, however, there's 9 of them. These red squares save your game's data like how we save memories, so 9 of them sprawled out could be all of James's memories being realized. The double doors take us to a large square room with 2 pyramid heads sitting at the front top area. And lo and behold, Maria is there, hanging upside down on a frame in the middle. This scene is exactly like the one depicted in the prison's gallows during the tablet puzzle too. She calls out to James, terrified, and yells at the PHs to stop and leave them both the hell alone. The most emotion we've ever seen him show. The figures, of course, ignore the pleas, and the right one stabs Maria with his spear. James falls to his knees in a final moment of failure, only this time, unlike the elevator, the guilt is even more powerful. James is forced to witness Maria dying a 3rd time, and there was practically zero way of preventing it. The town and its manifestations torture and play with James a final time before the PHs come down. James begins a short monologue. He was weak. That's the reason why he needed Pyramid Head. He needed him to punish James for his sins of murdering Mary and attempting to run from it all this time. But now, it's the end. James has faced his demons and declares that this will be over. The PHs actually step back when he gets up. He's now ready to defeat his inner darkness and face it head on. Now that his suppression is gone, PH is at full strength, even doubling it, but so is James. We take control and we are locked in, having to fight 2 PHs at once. They walk toward us and stab James if they get close. They can also swing their spears in a circular motion sometimes. We can actually finally damage them with our weapons, and that's exactly what we have to do. The music playing is also notable. Harsh, deep, unsettling, saw-like noises contrasted with calm, melancholic chords. The chords could represent relief, respite from a traumatic event, which the harder sounds would stand for. The PHs share a health pool, so it doesn't matter which one you go for. They have a lot of health, but after blasting them enough, they both go to the center carpet. They will stab their spears into the floor, and since James has beaten them physically and mentally, kill themselves. We find that they individually contain eggs. Left has scarlet, right has rust-colored. The eggs go into holes on the 2 doorways on both sides. We go through them, and another door after, and we get to one more long hallway. While walking, we overhear a past conversation between a sick Mary and James. He brought her flowers, but Mary denies them. She calls herself disgusting, a monster between drugs and a disease. She believes she's useless, a soon-to-be dead pile of skin, and James is silent through the whole thing. Mary simply wants to die, but thinks the hospital's only keeping her alive for its own profit. She just tells James to go, insultingly asking if he's deaf. However, she quickly 180s and pleads for him to come back, to tell him she'll be okay, that she won't die. Past the door is the stairway to the roof, and when we pass the staircase that possesses annoying physics, we meet Mary. She's looking out to the rest of the town. James calls her name in a hopeful tone, but it's safely assumable that it's empty hope. Mary isn't very happy though. She mentions a repeated mistake of James, probably trying to find her. She also reminds he killed her. He quickly understands that this is Maria in disguise, but he refuses needing her anymore. Maria becomes extremely clingy towards James and begs that she'd be just like he wanted. James further denies, and Maria doesn't want to let him win. She thinks he deserves to die just like Mary did. She distorts and corrupts, turning into sort of a nun, hung upside down from a metal frame. This is the final boss of Silent Hill 2, Mary. This is likely a materialization of all the ugly things James suffered as a result of Mary's illness. The detachment due to her being bedridden, the verbal abuse, and lack of love. Maria can also play a part in this. She wasn't very nice to James along the way. We also tended to not stay too close to her when she was around. It's James's conflicted feelings about Mary towards the end of his relationship with her. He doesn't know if Mary even was a lovable person at that point, or just some random mean woman. For Mary, we know she is bedridden and unable to do really much of anything. She grew to have a severely damaged self-esteem and self-image, wishing she would just die. The boss, for her, is how she views herself. A horrible, monstrous demon that deserves to be beaten up and killed. For James, it's a husk of someone he once loved so much, destroyed and removed of all living qualities. Fighting her, Mary has several attacks, spewing out flesh-eating insects from her mouth from afar, which stun James and slowly chip away at his health. Her tentacle is also used to strangle James, hit him, etc. Mary is a healthy one, but she eventually goes down. She is helpless at this stage, uttering James's name, and one more shot will put her to sleep. With this, we are finished, and the final cutscenes ensue. James and Mary are together for their final time. Mary is in the bed and James is next to her on a chair. He gives a plea for forgiveness, but Mary restates her wish for death. James says that's why he killed Mary, but then denies that idea, just flat out admitting he hated her. He wanted to live without her. Mary doesn't fully believe it though. She has just one request for her ex-husband, to go on with his life. We then hear the entirety of Mary's letter, not just the first snippet we heard at the beginning. This part needs no explanation. At the very end, we see Laura walk off into and out of the graveyard we met Angela in. James follows her, and this confirms we have acquired the Leave ending, one of the 6 possible endings in the game. It is known that there is no affirmation on what SH2 ending is canon to the series and game's lore, so this is only up to interpretation if James truly escaped. In this one, however, James gets out of the cursed town, surviving his traumatic venture into it. He even seemed to have brought Laura along with him even after the truth was revealed back in room 312. He actually did overcome his internal demons, despite how he's acted throughout the whole game. Who knows how much he's changed, but in this ending, he'll continue life, probably, accepting his murderous past and raising Laura, what Mary was wanting to do. The credits show, then the results, and we have beaten Silent Hill 2. There are 5 other possible endings we are able to get in the game, because why not? Let's take a look-see. First off, we have In Water. This ending is acquired by keeping health low, checking Angela's knife often, things of that matter. In this ending, Maria as Mary is standing at the roof, looking out like in Leave. When confronted, James realizes that it's actually Maria and says he's done with her. This causes Maria's breakdown, with James adding the problem is that Maria doesn't exactly equal Mary. The ghost wife then declares that Sunderland won't get his Mary back and transforms. When beaten, we still see James and Mary together. As per usual, Mary wanted to die, and James replies that's why he killed her. Well, actually because a part of him hated her too. Mary laments that her husband is suffering for his actions, and that's enough for her. She dies, and James picks her corpse up, bringing it to his car. We hear him talking to Mary up above. He's discovered the real reason why he came to Silent Hill. To kill himself to be with his wife. He drives his car, quite loudly, into Toluca Lake, where he commits suicide by drowning. He wishes he could be with Mary so much that, well, he can't take it anymore. He'll be dead together with her, quite literally, forever stuck at the bottom of Toluca Lake. James killing himself isn't exactly a surprise either. We could tell he was severely mentally troubled. There's even a nod to James's alcoholism, saying he drank a fair bit to forget. The second message at Nearly's bar, that James will go somewhere different at the end, can't be forgotten. Since James killed himself and Mary, he's going down to hell. Mary is going to heaven, a delusion that James will be with Mary he never seemed to snap out of. Next, we have Rebirth. This ending is acquired by grabbing 4 special items: the White Chrism, Obsidian Goblet, Crimson Ceremony Book, and Lost Memory Book, then beating the game. James goes onto the roof of the hotel, meeting Maria by the window wall thing. The whole "I can be who you want" thing goes down, and James says he can't go on without Mary. Interestingly, he just looks at the ground rather than Maria when saying this. She transforms, and after we kill her, James is on a boat now. He is headed for Toluca Lake Island, specifically to a church. We can't enter the church, it's actually just a 2D image, Doom style, nor walk around the island. He narrates the same line he said before, without Mary. He can't go on, except it's said directly to her. He speaks on old gods still being present in the town. This is maybe referring to the town's cult explored in the first, third, and fourth games. They can give the powers to those who still worship them, ones to defy death. This is exactly what James does. He is implied to have revived Mary for himself. James, instead of leaving the town or drowning himself, decides to do some black magic. He truly cannot live on without Mary and takes a course better than suicide, but who knows how pure his life will be. It may repeat these events once again in a much darker tone for old James. He might be trapped in the town forever, and this isn't the solution he thinks it is. He's so desperate though, he really doesn't care. Thirdly, we have Maria. This ending is acquired by spending a lot of time with Maria, keeping her safe, not bumping into her, making sure she keeps up, etc. Instead of Maria, it's actually a manifestation of Mary herself on the bed. James walks up to her and initially acts happy to see her as we expected. Mary, however, feels different, doubting James's glee and bringing up his murder. He says he couldn't watch her suffer, but Mary doesn't buy it. James killed her so he could get a burden off his shoulder. He admits that he may have had some of those feelings, and half-assedly says he was tired. Mary gets up from the bed saying how could she ever forgive him, and transforms. When we kill her, we see James in Rosewater Park looking out into Toluca Lake. A Mary-like voice asks Sunderland if he's killed Mary again, and it turns out to be Maria. Mary's completely gone now, and only the fake ghost of her is left. James says to her that he wants Maria with him. It's okay that Mary's gone, because James has her. He just entirely forgets about his dead wife, and what he did only for him to go in a circle again. After the letter finishes, we see Maria and James walking together all the way back at the observation deck. James's ghost wife coughs, and he says, in a sort of sinister tone, that she better do something about it. James is so deep in his delusions and in such a cynical mind state that he'll repeat everything that's happened without any care. He still wishes to see Mary, but is as desperate as to go and take the version of her created by his most base desires. It's an incredibly selfish ending, and one of the most depressing if you think about it. At least James freed himself from suffering at Silent Hill during In Water. In this ending, it's a spiral. On to the joke endings. First, we have UFO. This ending is acquired by using the blue gem in the Otherworld Brookhaven Hospital Garden, just before the boat section, and in room 312 prior to the tape.
Mr. Sunderland raises the mysterious blue gem to the glowing sky, and out comes an army of UFOs. Silent Hill 1 protagonist Harry Mason steps in from out of the blue, among the crowd of extraterrestrial beings in such a beautiful PS1 model. James asks who this man might just be, but Harry comes along with a question about his daughter, Cheryl. Mr. Sunderland has no idea of what Mason may be babbling about, and asks the iconic lines concerning his wife. All seems peaceful until, oh my stars, James is zapped by an alien's ray gun, as Harry watches him cry out in pain and anguish. Such a horrible sight indeed. Harry and the Martian carry James's limp body away, and he gives a little being a thumbs up with a sinister smile. Just one of many examples of how terrifying an unknown force from outer space can be.
And finally, the dog ending. This ending is acquired by using the dog key, found in a doghouse, can't be sure though, there's no dog, near Jack's Inn when we're with Maria, on the doors to the observation deck in the hotel's 3rd floor. When James opens the door, we find a Shiba Inu dog, officially named Mira, doing cute dog things at a control panel. We can see levers, buttons, monitors, headphones on her as well. She's listening to Akira's music. We can even see James's and Maria's heads on a map. It's obvious that this entire game was controlled by Mira. How plot twisting. James exclaims, "So it was all your work," in Japanese and falls into disbelief. Mira walks up and licks him. A goofy credits plays with comedical game scenes and Mira instead of James, and a dogified ending song. Well, that's all I have. One long as hell video to accommodate for my absolute hyperfixation of Silent Hill. I hope you enjoyed it. This game has such deep intricacies and neat things and little nooks and crannies. I love looking into it. Obviously there's much more that was missed in this analysis, but I think I treaded a good amount of ground. Plus, as said before, I don't want to bloat this video and take up too much of your time, dear viewer. I started making this whole thing sometime in late October 2022, when I've slowly added to it and finally finished this damn thing in April of 2024. I'm proud of myself, honestly. I began to get fixated on this whole series when the SH2 remake was announced. Personally, I have pretty optimistic hopes for this game, staying cautious of course. I'm so excited for the future of this series though. In my humble opinion, I hope they do the rest of the original 4 games if the remake does well. While I'm not one to really relate to characters, I just love SH2s. The characterization, voice acting, emotions, everything is portrayed perfectly to me. The VAs of this game are not professionally trained as today's are, if I'm not mistaken. This really adds a layer of realism and even dreaminess to everyone's dialogue, especially James. Sometimes Sunderland can sound so out of touch with reality. In simplest terms, Eddie gets crazier, Angela gets sadder, Maria becomes much stranger. Laura stays mostly the same, though gets less brattier and more talkative. The environments the game throws you into are masterfully crafted as well. The grimy, dirty, and destroyed world you explore is so isolated from the rest of society. It looks like some catastrophic event occurred in Silent Hill, but we never find out what. The other worlds we see in the game, Brookhaven, the prison, hotel, are all unique and visceral. The hospital dons this depressed, bleak, empty aesthetic, while the prison is dirty, gross, and out of this reality with impossible geometry. The hotel seems normal, but once James snaps out of his repression, the real Lakeview is damp, flooded, and deteriorated. Each level has its own identity and symbolic meaning, which only enhances the game's experience further. The game's music is something I want to touch on as well. Composed by Akira Yamaoka, it's so incredibly diverse, spanning several genres. From ambient noises to industrial-like banging, otherworldly sounds, and hard rock bangers, it proves Akira's skill. It very well reflects the psyches and thoughts of the characters and reality-defying nature of the levels. The ending songs don't fit too well sometimes if we're looking at it from a lore perspective, but they go so hard it's not an issue. Angela's music is a personal favorite of mine, with Theme of Law Reprise being one of my most common listens from the soundtrack. It's such a good representation of her deep, permanent feelings of failure, guilt, and suicide. Betrayal is great too, perfectly mirroring James' overcoming of his demons and moving past them after reality hits him. The symbolism in this game is just nuts as well. It's extremely well thought out, Pyramid Head being James' desire for punishment for killing Mary, for example. The items, literal whole places, characters, it feels like they all represent something, whether it relates to James or not. The subtleties that Team Silent threw into the mix are so minor looking but can mean so many things, it's mind-blowing. I really don't have much else to say here. I've been wanting to play this game for a few years, and finally having enjoyed it is amazing. I'm ready to see what the future holds for this series, and to also hopefully do more videos on the rest of the original 4. For me, this is my love letter to Silent Hill 2. Thank you.